Hey, welcome back to Anti-Social Studies. My name is Emily Glankler, and today I'm going to write another SAQ from the 2022 AP World History exam. I'm going to write question 2. So as always, I'm going to give myself around 15 minutes on the clock. That's like the maximum amount of time you should be spending on one full SAQ. Let's dive into it. All right, as always, I want to skim through the questions first just to get an idea of what types of prompts they're going to want me to answer before I dive into this document, especially if it's a visual document. You can sort of get lost in those. So really you want to make sure that you look through the 3 little mini questions they're going to ask you first so you can stay focused, because again, the SAQ is a time suck, right? They want you to want to overdo it and write a whole essay for each of these questions. But if you do that, you're going to run out of time. Okay, so let me just skim through. It's asking me to identify an economic development that led to whatever situation is in this map, and a political development that led to this situation in the map. Great. And then explain one reason why this survey of factories was carried out by the British Royal Navy. Okay, so really I just got to figure out what's going on in this map, whatever situation is occurring, and then they're wanting me to figure out causation, like what led to whatever it is we're seeing on the map. As always, when you are looking at a visual document, you read the source information word for word. Normally, most of the information you need in a visual document, whether it's a painting or a work of art or a map or whatever, most of the information you need, you're going to find in the source information. Okay, so this is a plan of factories, which includes trading posts and warehouses in the city of Canton, which is in southern China, in 1856. And this plan was drawn from a survey of the area carried out by the British Royal Navy. Okay, so I'm just jotting down some notes to keep myself focused. This is basically Canton factories, 1856 British Royal Navy, right? Those are kind of the 3 big ideas of what I'm looking at here. And now I'm going to go into the map just to get an idea of what is this situation that we're mapping. We see, okay, I see Danish, Spanish, French, American, Swedish, English, Dutch. Okay, so, and then 2 Canton city walls. So basically what I'm seeing is the entire coast and port area is dominated by Europeans. Or I guess I should just say Westerners, because Americans are in there too. Okay, so essentially I don't see anywhere in here that's Chinese factory, property, the Chinese government, right? Everything in here is a Western, an outside country's factory. Shops, the Americans and the English each have their own garden. Chinese packing warehouses, we can assume the Chinese workers are there. And then this is outside Canton city walls, so probably outside of the realm of the government. Okay, this makes sense if we've learned about kind of China in the 1800s. So now identify one economic development that led to the situation represented in the map. And I need to consider that I know I'm also going to have to think of a political development. So political development is going to be wars. So for example, I'm going to save the Opium Wars is going to be my political development, because wars, conflicts, whatever. So an economic development let me just do the political one first then, if that's what comes to my mind. So I'm going to skip to question B. Identify one political development that led to the situation represented in the map. I'm going to say the political development is basically the weakening of the Chinese government and their loss in the Opium Wars. One political development was the weakening of the Qing dynasty's control over its port cities. Throughout the 19th century, the Qing government lost a series of wars with the English and other Western powers that led to unequal treaties that gave outsiders special trading privileges in China. Okay, here's the trick, is that political and economic are veering into each other. So the political development is that the government is getting weaker, and so they're having to sign these unequal treaties. I feel pretty good that that counts as a political development. The trick is, can I think of a totally separate economic development too? Economic development could be trade. It could be the rise of industrialization and imperialism. Okay, so the trick here is that in theory, I could use the answer that I just wrote out for B I could almost use it for either answer. It's both a political development because it's talking about a weak government and signing treaties, but it's also an economic development because it's talking about those treaties giving away trading privileges. But I can't just copy and paste and talk about the same thing for both answers, right? So people ask, like, can you talk about the same thing for all three if it was relevant? I mean, I wouldn't try it, right? In theory, I guess I could, but I would have to have a totally different explanation and give even more detail. Like in theory, you want them all to be able to stand on their own, totally separate, and be three distinct answers and three distinct pieces of evidence. So I'm going to focus more on like the Industrial Revolution. So the Industrial Revolution, which began in England, gave Western economies an advantage over more traditional agricultural economies like China. Okay, so I'm identifying a very specific economic development in the Industrial Revolution. Now, again, as always, when it says identify, yes, that means you can write a little bit less than if they asked you to explain, but you still want to make sure that to the reader, it's very clear that you know what you're talking about. So I always like to tell my students to add in just one more sentence, like really hitting whatever point you're trying to make home. So with industrial weapons and navies, countries like England and the United States were able to overpower traditional land-based states like China and gain influence within their local trading economies in key port cities like Canton. Okay, I'm just gonna move on to C for now. I need to like clear my brain. That answer was a long run-on sentence, and then I'll go back and look at it if I have time. Again, the key for the SAQ is timing. You have to be willing to just like cut ties with an answer and move on. Even if like my brain is going, oh my gosh, I can say that so much better. I can explain that so much better. I can go into more detail. No, that's the trap of the SAQ. You gotta move on. Get through all of your, like all 9 of your little mini answers. And then if you have time, go back and look and see if you can add in more detail and flesh out your thought more. For now, let's look at C. Explain one reason why the survey of the factories was carried out by the British Royal Navy. Okay, this is where I might extend my discussion of these unequal treaties, right? Because it does kind of connect to what I said in B. But again, I want to make sure that I'm giving new, unique evidence to where it doesn't feel like I'm just recycling my answer from question B. So after the Opium Wars, the Chinese government was forced to grant most favored nation status and other privileges to the British government. Because of this, the British had essentially complete power over key trading ports like Canton. Outside and I'm going to put in quotes because I want them to know this is coming from the map. Outside the Canton city walls, the port itself was administered by the British government, represented here by the Royal Navy, and was not governed by the Chinese government, but instead was granted extraterritorial status as basically an extension of the British trading empire. Okay, now, if I was taking the exam, this is where I would just move on to the next question, and I would come back to these if I had time. Again, the strategy for the SAQ section is like the multiple choice section. Get through all 9 of your little mini answers and get something on the page, get an answer down, and don't think too hard about it, right? And get through it. Then if you have time, go back and look and figure out if you can like tweak your answers. For now, I just want to kind of skim through and see if there's anything really easy and simple that I can add to make these answers even stronger. So again, I'm looking for A is one economic development that led to this, and I identified the Industrial Revolution. I feel like I've done a good enough job explaining that. I've talked about industrial weapons and navies that give England an advantage over China so that they can gain influence. I feel good about that. B is a political development. I'm talking about the weakening of the Qing dynasty's control. That's clearly a political development, and their signing of unequal treaties. C is the only one that asked me to explain, so this is the one I want to make sure I have the most historical reasoning for. One reason why the survey is carried out by the British Royal Navy. I'm again talking about the Opium Wars, but I feel like I've included enough new information, the most favored nation status, extraterritorial status for British people, that sort of thing. So I just want to make sure I've really explained this well. So because of this, the British had essentially complete power over cities like Canton. Outside of Canton city walls, the port itself was administered by the government, represented by the Royal Navy. So good, I made sure to tie it back into the question, which is asking, why is the Royal Navy the one making this map? It was not governed by the Chinese government, but instead was granted and was an extension of the British trading empire. Okay, I feel fine about those. I don't feel great about them, but that's really like how you know you've done a decent job with the SAQ, is you should never feel like, oh my gosh, I hit that answer out of the park and I wrote this like beautifully formatted essay or whatever. No. That means you've spent too much time on one question and you're running out of time for the others. So for now, I'm just going to stop here. I would move on to the next question. As always, like and subscribe to this channel. And if you want to see my answers kind of written out in a better format, check the link in my comments. See you soon.